more you listen, the more you know. This is Good Politics with Dr. Wilson and Adam Whiteman.
All right, welcome back. We had to pay a couple of bills there. If you're listening to this on the air, of course, you just heard our last segment. But if you missed that last segment, we talked a lot about Nixon. We gave a pretty in-depth history of Richard Nixon. And now we're going to jump into Donald Trump and some of the parallels with this impeachment.
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about, we're really just talking about impeachment. And what we wanted to do was show how Nixon's impeachment really was a paradigm. It was something that where serious criminality was occurring and where the system used a procedure that was bipartisan to get rid of a president who had serious problems. Now, what I want to do for this clip, for this segment, we're going to discuss the Trump impeachment. And before I do that, I want to define again a concept that's very important. The concept is called opposition research. You'll notice when Nixon's people broke into the Democratic National Headquarters.
Watergate.
Yeah, one of the things the principal thing they're really looking there for is information. When you want to get information or dirt on your opponent, it's called opposition research. Now, here's an example of what opposition research is in a normal sense. It's stuff like whether you pay taxes and how much. You'll notice that the Democrats want to get Trump's tax returns. And what do they want to look at with those? It's probably not criminality because the IRS is someone who would make a referral to the DOJ if there was criminality. Mostly with the IRS, it's audit. So it's not criminality. It's more like dirt. You want to say, how much did you pay in taxes? You're really not paying enough taxes. So that's an example of trying to get opposition research. Another example would be whether you filed for bankruptcy, whether you had an affair with someone. If you could find truthful information about that can be used against you. Whether your business connections pose a conflict of interest. That's very important. So all that stuff is opposition research. The reason why we bring up this concept of opposition research is that this is what Trump is getting in trouble for. Normally, the ethics of opposition research is pretty simple. As long as you don't break a law, it's okay to get it. Trump wanted to get the Ukraine government, to turn over certain information about what happened to Trump in the 2016 election because Trump was concerned that certain things happened that weren't true. For example, he was concerned that this narrative that he was a Russian agent or compromised in some way by Russia, he thought that there was no truth in that. And he thought that was a setup and that they were picking on it. And that is not such a big deal. What's much more of a big deal is that an actual investigation into that premise is going on right now. There's a DOJ investigation and an IG investigation. So there are investigations into the Mueller investigation, its origins. So that makes it rather interesting because those investigations are there, there is a predicate upon which the United States can ask Ukraine for help in that. So, I mean, there's a treaty that allows it, and certainly you don't even have to worry about the treaty. Governments do this all the time. There's an existing investigation going on. Trump is concerned about 2016, and so he wants to get the Ukrainians to probably feed that investigation. Feed it with what? Well, feed it with documentary evidence. Feed it with any kind of proof that could be there.
Right. Okay. So they do regularly share information for ongoing investigations.
Sure.
Via the treaty.
Sure. And so when Trump did this and was requesting information from the Ukrainians for help regarding 2016, Trump did something else. He mentioned his opponent, Joe Biden, because concurrently with trying to get the information about 2016, he knew also that there was information about a conflict of interest on his opponent, his potential opponent. He knew that Biden had that prosecutor fired in Ukraine, which we covered on a prior episode. He knew that Biden's son was involved with a company that was under investigation, and he knew from Rudy Giuliani that there were two narratives about that situation, about what that prosecutor Shokin was up to. And so, on the phone call, Trump is saying things like, while you're at it, I need you, I would hope that you would look into this matter. And so, he's trying to get opposition research on his opponent. There's nothing illegal about it, but it looks shocking to the public once it's disclosed. Go ahead and play clip number 8 from Alan Dershowitz.
I did not. I did not see either an impeachable crime or any indictable crime. What I saw is some pretty rough politics. And the answer to that is let the other side play rough politics. In the end, this is going to be a political tie. It will dirty the Biden camp a little bit. There'll be some Americans who will say maybe the president shouldn't have made that call. But it doesn't belong in Congress in an impeachment inquiry, and it doesn't belong in the Justice Department. It is not a crime, high or otherwise.
It's not a crime. I mean, we do want to remember who Alan Dershowitz is. He's a very, very, I'd say, talented and very educated lawyer
Right.
that studies politics.
Right, but I would not defer to him on grounds of idolatry or whatever. I mean, he's what I would do is this. He's got a philosophy, a perspective, and his perspective is as follows. You're really only supposed to do an impeachment proceeding when you find criminality, serious criminality, and then you can start to do the proceeding. What you have to understand is there's a lot of people who disagree with that. And to some extent, he almost admitted that himself when he said it's hardball politics all around. What basically is being said is if you're going to call up the Ukrainians and mention Joe Biden, then what we're going to do is, because we have the votes and the subpoena power, is we're going to embarrass you and we're going to impeach you. And, so we're going to teach you a lesson never to do this again. And try to set a norm in American politics that says, even though this is a legal way to get opposition research, there still should be ethical guidelines for how you get opposition research. And the president shouldn't be able to call up the other leader and to lawfully procure information on an opponent. Now, let me do this. One of the things that makes this interesting, and I think it tells us a little bit about the way Trump operates, is that because there's an official inquiry going on into these investigations into what happened in 2016, there's an ostensible predicate for Trump to make this request, and that's what is interesting. In other words,
what does that mean, ostensible predicate?
Well, here's what Trump is taking this position. Trump is saying, look, Ukraine has been corrupt in the past. We've had this issue in 2016. There is an ongoing investigation that we have over here into 2016, and he's saying something very simple. We, the United States, do not want to fund a country with aid unless we know that that country is against corruption. And so there is an ostensible predicate for him to go and ask for this inquiry, for him then to get the opposition research as an incidental benefit. This is what we're talking about here, an incidental benefit. There's a predicate for him to make the request and to get on the side a little incidental benefit.
I see. So this is when Trump called the leader of Ukraine saying, well, we're going to stop aid. There's supposed to be some aid delivered. We're going to not stop it, but delay it at the very least.
Right. So
unless if you provide documents or something like that.
Well, let's do it this way, because this is exactly what the issue is about. And this is very important to walk through this because there's a lot of social misinformation out there. So walk through this very closely. Congress appropriated aid for Ukraine, and it included Javelin missiles or whatever to shoot tanks down. Russia actually didn't want that to happen. And the president signed that bill. And so the money is there to be let loose to them. And in July, the president put a hold on it. Now, the president, I don't believe, has the ability to stop the aid from being distributed unless he uses the impoundment power, and I think that would have created a serious problem legally, whether he could have done that. Instead, under the statute, he could put a hold on it for a little while. Now, what's important to understand is when he made the phone call to Zelensky didn't know that the aid was held. And so it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case that he knew that the aid was held. In fact, they didn't find out about that until, according to Politico, until the end of August, and then they ended up making a little bit of noise about it. But the bottom line was, the aid was just slow walked. All right, and I think people who take the position that Zelensky was pressured with the aid don't know what they're talking about because that's not what the phone call says. The phone call is really a cooperative phone call. Zelensky himself said he wasn't president at all. It was a fun phone call. And as if you read it, it's more like two people getting along rather than there being any pressure. So the aid basically was just slow walk. But as the Trump people say, they're allowed to ostensibly withhold aid if a country is not going to comply with investigations and not going to comply with the ostensible predicate of being against corruption.
They had a reason.
Right, they had an ostensible reason. And we're going to come back to that. But in order to hit that, let's play clip number 3.
Let's take one thing, the term quid pro quo, right? There's always quid pro quo when foreign countries deal with each other. The issue is not whether there was a quid pro quo. It would be bizarre if two countries were dealing with each other and it wasn't an exchange. They're always pursuing their interests. The question here is, was there a corrupt quid pro quo? That is, was the president leveraging his power over foreign affairs exclusively to get the Ukrainians basically to work on the Trump 2020 campaign? On the other hand, if what the president was actually doing was trying to leverage the Ukrainians to assist in Attorney General Barr's legitimate Justice Department investigation into the investigations that were attendant to the 2016 campaign, that's not only normal, it's entirely appropriate. But if it's pitched to the public as if, was there a quid pro quo about 2016, what the public is taking from that is that the suggestion that there was a corrupt, improper deal.
Was there a corrupt and improper deal there? It seems like it's not, based on what you said.
Right. So because of the way it's structured, because of the way it's set up, no, it's all that's happened is that it happens to be an incidental benefit, not a corrupt thing. Now, this is a point I want to hit again, but play clip number 1 and then we'll talk about it.
I was involved with the process by which the money was held up temporarily. Okay, 3 issues for that: the corruption in the country, whether or not other countries were participating in the support of the Ukraine, and whether or not they were cooperating in an ongoing investigation with our Department of Justice. That's completely legitimate. So you're saying that the President of the United States, the chief law enforcement person, cannot ask somebody to cooperate with an ongoing public investigation into wrongdoing?
So he's saying he's basically saying, of course he can ask for cooperation.
Right. So again,
of course, Trump can ask for cooperation.
Right. I mean, on what we're trying. Look, well, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to say that on the surface, there is a predicate for this behavior. You can on the surface, and so because it's surface clean, you can because there's a predicate for it. Then when you get this information on Biden, it comes incident to that predicate. It comes as a little incidental benefit. It's not a quid pro quo. It's all happening legitimately on the surface. And let me give you an example here of what I'm really trying to get after here. Is that people may not understand what I'm doing here. I'm trying to show you something. What I'm trying to show you is that Nixon directly violated the law to achieve certain objectives, to try to get opposition research and to make, because he was very insecure. Whereas what Trump is doing is actually being compliant with the law to achieve certain objectives. In other words, compliance is actually what you find a way to comply and to achieve the objective. You achieve it through compliance. I'll give you another example. Trump often says that he doesn't pay very much taxes because he's found the loopholes. If you could get really good tax lawyers and you find lawful ways not to pay taxes, the question is, are you violating the law or are you complying with the law? Under one way of looking at it, which is called positivistic, you're actually better at complying with the law than someone else because you know more where the loophole is. And so you found a way to achieve your objective. What's your objective? Not to pay very much money, and you found a way to do it through law-compliant behavior. So it's actually the point is you still get this benefit, but you do it by actually.
And so he's just simply tiptoeing the law. And whereas Nixon had blatant disregard for the law, committed true high crimes and misdemeanors.
Yeah.
Trump may not be doing that.
So exactly. The point is that Nixon was the paradigm case of criminality, whereas, lots of these players do this. I'm thinking of Hillary Clinton using a private server. Do you know one of the ways she was able to do that with her emails was that she was ahead of the game. She was using these servers before there were rules and regulations against them. When the digital age started, lots of people in government were communicating through private email and this and that. And it took a while for the security state and for the institutional state to create these rules. And so if you have good lawyers and you're ahead of the game before those rules get created, you know where the crevices and the cracks are in the law, and you operate within those spaces. By the way, I want to talk a little bit about incidental benefits. I hope you understand that the entire campaign finance system is based on the philosophy of incidental benefit. In other words, let's do it this way. You're running for election, and I'm a rich person, okay? The way this works is I'm supposed to fund in the marketplace what I like. And if you are advocating a policy, let's say tax cuts for the rich, and I like that, then what I do is I become one of your donors. And so when you get the money, what you can say is that didn't affect my vote. I was going to vote that way anyway. And so therefore the money's just an incidental benefit. It's just something that comes along for the ride.
Something that happened.
Right. Now, let's go ahead and play clip number 9 on that.
There is this attack that he is putting forth, which really comes down to, anybody who ever took donations or speaking fees from any interest group has to be bought. And I just absolutely reject that, Senator. And I really don't think these kinds of attacks by insinuation are worthy of you. And enough is enough. If you've got something to say, say it directly. But you will not find that I ever changed a view or a vote because of any donation that I ever received.
Oh, that might be exactly what you're talking about right there.
Right.
Hillary's saying, I assume the question that Bernie Sanders was posing was, where are you taking money from? You have these gigantic, probably companies or something, that are swaying your views. But she's saying, no, I've never changed my views. Sure, but she never said that she didn't get money from them. Because she did.
Right. So that's exactly what was happening. Bernie was saying, they're paying you all this money, Goldman Sachs, to do their speaking fees, or they're saying things like they're giving money to the Clinton Foundation. There's all this money going in, and the answer back is, look, none of this is illegal. I was going to vote this way anyway. Just because they give me money doesn't mean I'm going to vote that way. Maybe they're dumb to give me money. I'm going to vote to regulate them. So as long as it's the whole system is based on incidental benefit, and what we're trying to do is we're really trying to give an understanding of how being compliant with the law can achieve certain objectives, as opposed to directly violating it like Nixon did. By the way, I want to hit this. It's very important. You're probably wondering how this story ends. Not the impeachment story, but the Ukraine thing. The aid eventually got dispersed to the Ukrainians, and so they're not under any any control of the U.S. or anything. The money has gone to them, and they are right now opening up those investigations. There's a new prosecutor, and his name is Ruslan Ryabashapka. Let's go ahead and play clip number 6.
Ukraine's new top prosecutor, Ruslan Ryabashapka, said on Friday he was not aware of any evidence of wrongdoing by Joe Biden's son, Hunter, and that his office is operating independently as it carries out an audit of his predecessor's dealings with cases that may have been related to the Bidens.
No foreign and domestic politicians, officials, or other people ever called me and tried to influence my decisions on this or any particular criminal proceeding.
So I want to understand these characters real quick. That was a terrific pronunciation, just a sidebar.
Yeah.
Now, the guy that was saying he was not influenced, was that the Ukrainian leader on the other side of the phone call, or is that the new prosecutor?
The new prosecutor. You have this new guy that came in, Zelensky, and supposedly he's, he's supposed to be someone who's against corruption, okay? So he didn't even have a political background. I called him the Jimmy Carter of Ukraine. I actually don't study Ukraine, so I don't even know if that's true. But the point is, he seems to be a fresh person. So he comes in and he appoints this prosecutor who's got this reputation for being very, very good, supposedly, and that's what I read. And so what he's going to do is audit these files, audit Shokin's files, and he's going to look and see if there's anything there. And that doesn't mean that anyone gets indicted. It just means that if there's any paperwork or any bank transfers or any documentary evidence or anything, any official finding of something that what happened, then that will be enter the public record. And by the way,
So this prosecutor is going to look into everything from Burisma to
Yes.
So Burisma being the company, the energy company that's suspected of well, not suspected of, but they were embezzling and all these.
right. Burisma's the company who
Employed.
supposedly they took the owner took a bunch of money. This is what the allegation was, and then they ended up getting a sweetheart deal supposedly where the guy could come back and just pay some back taxes and everything was okay. Now after he stole the money and got into trouble, that he hired Hunter Biden to serve on the board at the time. Joe Biden was vice president, and at or about the time that Joe Biden is eventually going to get that prosecutor fired. Now, and again, there's two stories on this. We don't know which one is true, but, okay, so what's my point? My ultimate point is this. The question is whether opposition research is good or bad for democracy. Sometimes the media calls it dirt. It's not dirt if it's true. Okay, if it's opposition research. Now, if it wasn't true, if it was stuff that was false and you were paying for false information, that would be like Nixon. That would be serious criminality. If I say to you, I'm going to give you this money if you give me a false affidavit, that's like Nixon. That's serious criminality. But if that's not what's going on, that what comes out is different perspectives about what happened, then that actually is good for democracy because it means that it could enter the marketplace of ideas and we can fight about it. And in order to see that, play clip number 5. This is a stunning clip.
My son's comments, and I'm very proud of my son. My son's comments speak for themselves. Let's keep the focus here. The President of the United States says he wants to talk about corruption. Well, let's talk about corruption. He is running the most corrupt government in history of the United States of America, number one. Number two, he also is in a position where, as he talks about corruption, he is engaged in practices that, in fact, everyone around the world is looking and saying, how in God's name can this man be doing that while he's president? And look, Mr. President, you want to talk about corruption? I've released 21 years of my tax returns. I entered as one of the poorest men in Congress, left one of the poorest men in government, in Congress, and as vice president. I made no money while I was in there other than my salary. Mr. President, even Richard Nixon released his tax returns. Mr. President, release your tax returns or shut up.
Ooh, it's getting kind of hot in the room, huh? He very much compared him to Nixon. Not that we are, but now he did say quite a few things there. He's basically we see Biden finally fighting back.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think Biden looked good? That's the best I've ever seen Biden. And when I saw that clip, I said to myself, boy, this issue looks like a loser for Trump. For even if there is a conflict of interest over there, it's going to pale in comparison to certain ways that the narrative can be spun against Trump. I mean, I liked it when Biden said, look, I never profited in government. You're the one profiting in the hotels and so forth. I'm just a simple person. I tell you, that's going to play on Main Street. And this is why the argument is that opposition research actually is good for democracy. Now, I don't want to, there's also this other thing that people talk about, foreign meddling. There's this fear of hacks. And I read the other day, Facebook is worried about Iran trying to get involved in the elections by opening up Facebook pages and stuff like that. And, I mean, there's that conversation that goes on. But
foreign meddling can be bad. But I mean, I remember when a lot of the leaks from the DNC came out, I was I personally was happy that they came out. I think that the truth should surface.
Well, I mean, the situation with the DNC hack, I was told that could have been prevented with two-factor identification. Now, but this is the thing. If it's true that you have a power to protect yourself, as long as you're proactive, then I think that does at least frame this debate differently than if that were not true. If it were not true, then I think the debate would be over. But if it's true that they could have protected themselves with two-factor identification, I don't know. I tend to be on the side that things that are truthful are okay in democracy, because it means that you have a battle of perspective over a relevant issue. One other thing that we can mention here, a lot of people don't know this. During the Mueller report in May of 2018, this is before the Mueller report came out, the investigation was still going on, Democratic senators sent a letter to Ukraine telling them that they wanted them to cooperate with that investigation. And the suggestion was, this is before that appropriation occurred, follow this now. You have Ukraine wanting money, wanting aid, and Democratic senators in 2018 send a letter saying, well, you better cooperate with Mueller. It's the same thing, right? Wasn't that a very similar thing, an ostensible predicate? Because there's an investigation going on, and before we give you aid, you have to cooperate. There's an ostensible predicate, and those Democratic senators are hoping that there'd be something that would feed that Mueller investigation, and that's really all that Trump is doing too. And you may think, Adam, I'm not. I'm a politics professor. I'm not telling you that I'm against impeachment. I'm trying to tell you what kind of impeachment this is. This is hard politics. I said to you,
political impeachment.
It's hard politics all down the line. And that is what I've consistently said. I will tell you this. I think you and I really have gotten this one right. And we've had several shows on this, and I see other people talking about impeachment in other spaces, and even colleagues. And I have to tell you, I think we're on the ball on this. It's hard politics.
So bottom line, Trump did not overtly break the law. And if you think that it should have been a violation of the law, then perhaps we need to try to get changing the law. But as it stands, there was no crime.
Right.
And there's no real evidence of a crime.
Right. Again, some people want the impeachment process to be a legal process. Other people don't. There's a divide on that. But what you have is a bar fight. All right, you have Trump trying to get information on his opponent, and the other side's going to slam you back. It's a bar fight. Now, that's what you got. That's what's going on. The campaign has started. This is not an impeachment proceeding. The campaign has started. That's what this is.
Terrific. Until next week, you can always find us on YouTube. Check out our videos. Quality's constantly improving. We're seeing some growth there.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Your only source for truly balanced politics. Broadcast from Wright State University, this is Good Politics with Dr. Sean Wilson and Adam Whiteman.